I'm 90, married to a 19-year-old, and it's not what you think. Hi, my name is John, and yes, I'm 90 years old. Yes, I'm married. Yes, my wife is 19. And if you're already rolling your eyes or thinking I'm some crazy millionaire with a late-life crisis, well, you're dead wrong. This story began with a post. All I was doing was scrolling through Facebook. Yes, old people can use it too, looking for something to brighten my days. And then I saw a post in a group called Local Lonely Hearts, where a girl, Lisa, was looking for someone with wisdom and a love for jazz. I thought, well, that's definitely not for me, but, something clicked inside me. Maybe it was boredom, or maybe it was the prankster in me deciding to take a risk. I sent her a message. You have a weakness for jazz? Then I'm your guy. But you'll have to endure my stories about how I saw Ella Fitzgerald live. And guess what? She replied. Lisa was not what I expected. She wasn't joking or trolling. Her replies were genuine, thoughtful, and interesting. She asked about my stories, listened to tales of jazz clubs I'd visited, and even laughed at my old jokes. The days started to feel different. Heck, for the first time in years, I felt alive. But back then, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And honestly, if you think you figured it out already, nope. This is just the beginning. After a couple of weeks of texting, Lisa suggested we meet in person. Yes, you heard that right. She was the one who suggested it. My first instinct? Say no. Let's be honest. A 90-year-old man going on a date with a 19-year-old? That sounded like a bad reality TV show script. But then I thought, why not? My life was monotonous as it was, and here was a girl who wanted to hear my stories and talk about life. We arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown where I always had my morning coffee. When I walked in, I spotted her right away. Lisa was wearing a denim jacket, her blonde hair slightly messy, and her smile wide and almost childlike. She didn't just stand out among the other customers, she seemed to glow. You're John? Wow, you really do look like a jazz grandpa, she said instead of hello, then laughed so genuinely that I felt 20 years younger. We talked about everything. Her life in college, how she'd escaped a small town to find herself, and how she'd always been drawn to old things, books, music, stories. I told her about my days in New York, sneaking into underground jazz clubs and dancing until sunrise, as if the war could never touch us. But what struck me the most was this. She listened. Truly listened. Lisa didn't interrupt, didn't try to force her opinion in, didn't glance at her phone. She was completely present. At one point I asked, Lisa, why did you even reply to my message? I'm just an old man. This is strange, isn't it? She smiled, tilting her head slightly. You really don't get it, do you? You see life as it was, without filters or lies. And I'm tired of people who don't know what they want. You do. And that's magnetic. At that moment, I knew I was in deeper than I'd planned. And honestly, I had no idea where this was going. But as we left the cafe, and she said, See you later, John. I hope this wasn't our last date. I felt like the world had shifted. And no, that was far from the last one. Our dates became a regular thing. Coffee chats, park strolls, and even a trip to a jazz concert in a nearby city. Lisa was a whirlwind of energy in my slow, weary life. But the more I got to know her, the more I felt that behind her wide smile was something elusive. One evening over dinner, I finally asked her directly, Lisa, why are you so drawn to someone like me? I'm not complaining, but there's got to be a reason, right? She looked down, paused for a moment, and then said, You know, John, sometimes people search for things they never found in their families. My dad left us when I was 10. And you remind me of what he could have been. Kind, wise, someone who listens. Honestly, that answer knocked me off my feet. I felt something strange, a mix of sympathy, understanding, and fear. While I was glad she saw me as that figure, a part of me was scared that it might all come crashing down. But then the calls started, one after another. My lawyer, an old friend named Mike, was the first to shatter the enchantment. "John, are you okay? I've heard about your new adventures," he said, his voice both concerned and cautious. "Mike, what are you trying to say?" "If this is about Lisa, everything's fine. She's wonderful." "Listen, old friend, I'm worried about you. Do you even realize how this looks from the outside? If you get caught up in any legal or financial mess, it'll be a disaster. Are you sure you can trust her?" His words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Of course I trusted her. But what if I was getting carried away? What if Mike was right and I was letting emotions cloud my judgment? When I got home, Lisa was already there, sitting on my old couch with Barney in her lap, as if she knew something had happened. "You think I'm using you, don't you?" she asked suddenly, her voice firm but tinged with pain. "No. I mean, I don't know. Lisa, it's not you, it's me. People around me are starting to question things, and I'm confused." She walked over to me, placed her hand on mine, and said, "John, if you don't trust me, I'll leave. But tell me honestly, is it them, or is it you?" And at that moment, I realized the choice was mine. But things got even more complicated a week later when I found a letter on my doorstep. A letter that was about to change everything. That morning started like any other. I was sipping coffee on my porch, listening to a Miles Davis record, when Barney suddenly hissed at the door. I thought he was having another nightmare. He's old, like me. But then I noticed it. A white envelope lying under the door. No stamps, no address. Just my name written in neat handwriting. John Carter. I picked it up cautiously, as if it were a landmine left over from the war. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The words were typed, which immediately made me uneasy. "John, be careful. She's not who she seems. Her past is much darker than you think, and you might be her next victim." No signature, no explanation. I read the letter 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Who sent it? Mike? Someone Lisa knew? Or was it just a cruel joke? I decided not to tell Lisa, but the thought haunted me all day. I started searching for hints of lies in her words, in her eyes. And the scariest part? I found them. For instance, she never talked about what she did before moving to this town. Every time I asked, she'd laugh it off. "Oh, John, it's so boring you wouldn't want to know." I believed her because I didn't want to press, but now, it felt suspicious. That evening, Lisa suggested we go to a bar with live music. And although I was on edge, I agreed. We sat at a small table, and a jazz band played classics on stage. She seemed carefree, singing along and tapping her hand to the rhythm. But I couldn't shake the letter from my mind. Midway through the evening, she leaned over and asked, "John, you've been quiet today? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine," I said, but my forced smile told a different story. And then something happened that threw me completely off balance. A man walked into the bar, tall, in his 30s, with an arrogant look on his face. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on us. He headed straight for our table. "Lisa," he said, ignoring my presence entirely, "we need to talk." Her face froze, as if she'd been caught red-handed. She quickly stood up, nearly knocking over the table. "John, this is an old friend. I'll be right back." They stepped outside, leaving me with 1,000 questions swirling in my head. 15 minutes later, Lisa returned. Her eyes were red, and she said, "John, we need to talk." At home. The whole ride back was silent. She didn't say a word, and neither did I. Deep down, I felt that whatever she was about to tell me would change everything. And I was right. From her first words, I knew. My life was about to be turned upside down. We stepped into my house, and Lisa immediately closed the door, as if trying to shut out the outside world. She looked like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, but she mustered the courage to speak. "John," she began, lowering her gaze, "I need to tell you something, and you might end up hating me for it." I sank into my chair, feeling the tension mount. "Go on, Lisa. Just say it." She took a deep breath and started. That guy at the bar, Alex, he's my ex-partner. We were together in Los Angeles and well, let's just say we had a business. What kind of business? I asked, my voice tight. Not exactly legal, she admitted, staring at the floor. We ran cons, fraud schemes. Alex was the brains of the operation, and I played the roles. I'd pretend to be naive, act the part, make connections. We scammed a lot of people and stole a lot of money. But a couple of years ago, I left. I ran away. Moved here to start over. I was stunned, staring at her like she was a stranger. And you decided I'd be your next target? Is that it? She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. No, John. You have to believe me. I found you because I was lonely. You're the first person who didn't try to take something from me. You're kind. Genuine. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to believe her, but the words from the letter kept echoing in my head. Alex knows where you are now. What does he want? Lisa nervously tugged at the sleeve of her sweater. He wants me to come back, but not just that. He found out you have money, property, connections. He thinks we could use all that for another scam. We? I said sharply, standing up. Are you saying he thinks you're still working with him? Yes, she whispered. But I told him I'm done with all of that. And he got angry. Really angry. I felt a surge of anger myself. So you've brought your problems to my doorstep? You've made me a target for this scumbag? She broke down into sobs. John, I didn't know he'd find me. I just wanted a normal life. I wanted to be with you. Please. Believe me. I couldn't look at her. Every instinct I had screamed to throw her out and forget this whole thing. But damn it, I cared about her. Listen, I said finally. If Alex shows up again, we'll be ready for him. But if you're lying to me, Lisa, this is the end. She nodded. I'll fix this, John. I promise. The problem was, deep down, I already felt like the storm had just begun. From that day on, the house was filled with tension, like an invisible bomb had been hung from the ceiling with a ticking timer. Lisa tried to stay out of the way. She helped around the house, cooked dinner, even offered to come with me to the store just to spend time together. It seemed like she was trying to prove her intentions were pure. But I couldn't relax. The letter, Alex, her past. It all felt like a chess game where I couldn't see the whole board. And then, one evening, about a week after that bar encounter, everything unraveled. We were just about to sit down for dinner when there was a knock at the door. No, more like a demanding, aggressive pounding. Poor Barney hissed and bolted under the couch. It's him, Lisa whispered, her face pale. Stay here, I ordered, grabbing my cane, which, by the way, wasn't just for walking, and heading for the door. Standing on my porch was Alex. Tall, well-groomed, in a black leather jacket, his expression was both smug and cold. Behind him were two other guys, like henchmen in a mob movie. John, right? He said with a grin, as if we were old friends. I'm Alex. I think we have something to discuss. Do we? I replied coldly. Lisa told me it's over between you two. His grin faded, and he took a step forward, clearly unconcerned about my age or my cane. You know, John, Lisa can be charming, but she's not exactly reliable, and we both know people don't really change, do they? So let's skip the drama. I just need a little of your time, and your cooperation. And if I refuse? I asked, barely holding back the urge to strike him then and there. Alex smirked. Then we've got a problem, a big one. At that moment, Lisa appeared in the hallway. She looked like it took everything in her just to stand there. Alex, stop it. You promised to leave me alone. Promised? He laughed coldly. Lisa, darling, I always keep my promises, when they're beneficial to me. I could feel the conversation heading nowhere good. Alex was confident in his power, and that infuriated me. Listen to me, I said as firmly as I could. You think you can just waltz into my house and threaten me? You don't know who you're dealing with. Oh, I know exactly who you are, John, he said calmly. You're an old man with money, and you're attached to Lisa. That's all I need to know. He motioned to his men, and they walked away. But before he left, he turned back with a smirk. I'll be back, and when I do, you'll both regret not playing nice. When the door closed, Lisa collapsed onto the couch, shaking with fear. John, I never wanted this to happen. I've ruined everything, she said, her voice trembling as tears streamed down her face. I sat next to her and sighed. Listen, Lisa, we're in this together now. If he thinks he can intimidate us, he's got another thing coming. But we need to act, and fast. What are you going to do? She asked. I looked at her and said quietly, we're going to give him exactly what he doesn't expect. And in that moment, I realized, if I didn't take back control, I was going to lose everything. And losing Lisa? That wasn't an option anymore. After Alex and his men left, the house was filled with heavy silence. Lisa sat on the couch, staring blankly at one spot, while I stood by the window, watching the empty street as if expecting them to return. John, she finally spoke, what are you going to do? Alex. He's dangerous. So are those men. You have no idea what they're capable of. Maybe I don't, I replied, turning to face her. But there's one thing I know for sure. None of them have any idea what I'm capable of. She looked at me, clearly unsure of what I meant. That's when I revealed my idea to her. We'll play his game, Lisa, but by my rules. He thinks I'm an easy target, a rich old man who's grown attached to you. Fine, let him keep thinking that. Meanwhile, we'll prepare a surprise for him. You want to deceive Alex? She asked, her voice a mix of anxiety and surprise. No, Lisa. I want to destroy him, once and for all. She froze, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, but then, as if realizing there was no other choice, she seemed to accept it. Alex wasn't going to stop until he got what he wanted. All right, she finally said. What do we need to do? The first thing I did was call Mike, my lawyer. Naturally, he was shocked by the situation but had known me long enough to understand I wasn't joking. John, are you sure you want to get involved in this? These people can be dangerous. Mike, I'm already involved. I need you to ensure legal protection for me and to prepare everything necessary so Alex won't be able to threaten or touch us. He undoubtedly has a shady past. Dig deeper. Find something we can use against him. While Mike was working on that, I began putting my plan into motion. I knew Alex wanted money, and I intended to use that to my advantage. A few days later, Lisa and I met him at an agreed-upon location, a small motel on the outskirts of town. Alex clearly felt like he was in control of the situation. Well, John, he said with a smirk, have you come to your senses? I've decided that I want to get rid of you once and for all, I replied calmly, and for a moment, I saw his self-confidence falter. But, I continued. Yes, Alex smirked like a predator who had finally cornered his prey. He glanced at Lisa, as if checking whether she was as scared as she tried to appear. How much do I need? He repeated, pretending to think. Well, let's calculate. A house worth millions, bank accounts, and of course your attachment to her. He nodded toward Lisa. Let's say $2 million. That's a fair price for my disappearance, isn't it? I chuckled, and it seemed to catch him off guard. $2 million? To leave us alone? Yes. Got a problem with that? I leaned forward, resting on my cane. No problem, but I have a counteroffer. Alex raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You take the money I give you and disappear forever, but if I so much as hear your name, see your face, or find out you've come anywhere near Lisa, I swear you'll regret ever being born. Lisa stared at me with wide eyes. Alex looked like he wanted to mock me, but something in my tone made him reconsider. He nodded, pretending to be satisfied. Fine, John, but the money comes first. I gestured to the suitcase sitting on the chair beside me. There's $500,000 in there. You'll get the rest in a week, after you prove you've truly disappeared. Alex stood, walked over to the suitcase, and opened it. His face lit up at the sight of the stacks of cash. He shut the lid, picked up the suitcase, and smirked. Glad we could come to an agreement, John. But just as he turned, the motel door burst open and police officers stormed into the room. Alexander Bennett, one of them announced loudly. You are under arrest for fraud, extortion, threats, and other crimes. Lisa flinched, and Alex, shocked, tried to say something, but the officers were already twisting his arms behind his back. What the? John! You set me up, he shouted, struggling, but it was useless. I rose calmly to my feet. You set yourself up, Alex. Did you really think I'd leave a trail for you? Did you really think I wouldn't find out who you truly are? The police escorted him out, and one of the officers nodded at me. Good work, Mr. Carter. Everything went according to plan. When it was all over, Lisa approached me, her eyes filled with tears. Did you know this would happen? I did, I replied. Mike found everything we needed to put Alex away. I just gave him the chance to reveal his true colors. She hugged me so tightly, I almost forgot I was 90 years old. Thank you, she whispered. This isn't the end, Lisa, I said. But now we're free, and no one will be able to threaten us again. That night, for the first time in a long while, I went to bed with a light heart. Of course, I knew there would be many conversations and decisions ahead. But one thing was clear to me. Sometimes age is just a number, and love and determination can conquer even the darkest shadows of the past.